We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Our stories today. President Trump says he's very disappointed in Elon Musk as Musk fires back, claiming Trump would have lost the election without him. What an Oval Office presser reveals about the rising tensions between two of the most powerful people in the world. The U.S. and China agreed to set up a meeting to discuss trade. President Trump and Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping had a phone call this morning. What the two leaders talked about. A 9-0 Supreme Court rules Wisconsin has to give a Catholic charity group an exemption to the state's unemployment tax. That's one decision in our Supreme Court roundup. President Trump is doubling down on his debt ceiling demands, publicizing his agreement with a progressive senator. Could he be working towards a bipartisan debt deal? Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says many NATO members seem to agree to more than double NATO's defense spending. President Trump first brought up the idea. What member states are saying.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. President Trump says he's very disappointed in Elon Musk as Musk accuses Trump of being ungrateful for his help. It comes as Trump meets with the German chancellor at the White House, where the two were discussing the Russia-Ukraine war and tariffs. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good afternoon. First of all, Iris, before we get to Musk, first tell us more about the Oval Office meeting. What did the two leaders discuss?
Sure, good afternoon to you as well, John. So a lot came up during today's Oval Office meeting, as this is pretty much the first time the reporters got to ask President Trump questions in almost a week. And of course, as Trump hosts the German chancellor, the main topics that came up were Ukraine, Russia, as well as trade deals and tariffs. About Russia, Trump again says that Russia will respond to Ukraine's latest drone attack. And he just talked with Russia's Vladimir Putin, remember, yesterday for an hour and 15 minutes. Trump says that he told Putin, and he used an analogy to tell him that it's kind of like two young kids who really hate each other and have been fighting. He says sometimes you just have to let them fight for a while.
Something happened a couple of days ago, and now they do a return, and here it goes. It's not good. He's unhappy about it. I'm unhappy about it. I said, President, maybe you're going to have to keep fighting and suffering a lot, because both sides are suffering, before you pull them apart, before they're able to be pulled apart.
And President Trump says while he does want still immediate peace, that's so far not achievable, at least in the short term. He adds that he is still considering further sanctions on Russia, though now might not be a good timing. The German chancellor, meanwhile, tried to stress to Trump that it's Russia who's responsible for the violence in the war instead of Ukraine, as Trump expresses that he's not happy about both sides much.
It's really bodies, arms, heads. Legs all over the place. You've never seen anything like it. It's so ridiculous.
Ukraine is only targeting military targets, not civilians. So this is the difference, and that's the reason why we are trying to do more on Russia.
And the German leader, who you might have just seen actually behind me, just left the West Wing here at the White House, says during the meeting that the U.S. will play an important role in getting that potential peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. And meanwhile, on trade, President Trump says he's hopeful that the U.S. will secure a trade deal with the European Union, saying that Germany is a big part of it. Don.
So, Iris, right before the meeting with the German chancellor, President Trump also held a 90-minute call with China's Xi Jinping this morning. What came out of that?
Sure. So it's definitely a longer-awaited call as, if you remember, tensions have been escalating between the two countries for months since the announcement of the reciprocal tariffs on China and later escalating tariffs from both sides. And today, President Trump says he held an hour and 30-minute call with China's Xi Jinping and saying that the two quote, straighten out complexity of the trade deal, especially when it comes to rare earth minerals. And this phone call, meanwhile, comes days after President Trump accused China of totally violating a trade deal that the two sides achieved in Geneva a while ago, after which the two sides paused their tariffs. And today, Trump says that the trade talks should be back on track. Watch.
We have a deal with China, as you know, but we were straightening out some of the points having to do mostly with rare earth magnets and some other things. We're going to just make sure that everybody understands what the deal is.
Trump administration officials, meanwhile, though, have warned that this Chinese Communist Party has a history of breaking its promises when it comes to already established trade agreements, as well as, for example, when it comes to the fentanyl issue. And China has not kept its word in trying to stop that flow of fentanyl precursor coming into the U.S. for years. Meanwhile, Trump says that the two teams, when it comes to trade, will soon meet again with location to be announced, and that both him and Xi have accepted invitations from each other to visit each other's countries. Don.
And Iris, another main topic during today's presser was Elon Musk's escalating criticism of the president's big, beautiful bill. How did the president react to that?
Sure. So during the Oval Office meeting, we certainly saw today the strongest or clearest revelation almost about a deteriorating relationship between Trump and Elon Musk. We know that Elon Musk has been ramping up his attacks on Trump's big, beautiful bill for the past 2 days. For example, calling it a disgusting abomination in just recent days, citing the potential impact the bill will have on the national deficit. The White House, though, for the past few days have been quite lenient when it comes to responding to Musk without attacking or targeting him directly. But today, during the Oval Office meeting, when asked about it, President Trump says he's very disappointed in Elon Musk, and adding that Musk could soon escalate his criticism to Trump personally. Watch.
Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
And Trump says he understands why Elon Musk is upset, saying that Musk is not happy about the bill that is going to really take out that EV mandate or electric vehicle credit, which apparently would affect Tesla. And he also says that Musk is not happy about him recently pulling the nomination for the person to lead NASA. He says Musk actually wanted that person to lead the agency, but he didn't feel that is appropriate, and that's why Trump ended up pulling it. Meanwhile, Trump also says that, though, he believes that he would have won Pennsylvania regardless if Musk had helped him campaign or not in that key swing state. And that's when we saw Musk responded on X to a video of Trump saying that, and Musk is now saying that, quote, without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. He added, quote, such ingratitude. So we are certainly seeing in real time how the tensions are escalating between the two, now coming to this dispute over the role Elon Musk played during the 2024 elections. And while it remains to be seen, though, if Musk will go a step further, potentially, as Trump predicted, and target him directly. But it certainly remains to be seen if the two sides will continue to talk, and potentially Trump would, of course, slightly play down that tension and again praise Elon Musk for his role at Doge, which he has continued to do in recent days. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thank you very much. Next, the Securities and Exchange Commission took a step yesterday toward toughening rules for foreign companies listed on American stock exchanges. It said many Chinese firms benefit from having to make fewer regulation disclosures to investors. The agency voted unanimously to call for public comment on possible new regulations. The new rules would narrow the definition of foreign companies that are required to publish only annual reports and occasional updates. U.S. firms trading on the same stock exchanges must report quarterly financial updates and promptly disclose events like mergers and board member changes. China reacted today, accusing the U.S. of politicizing economic and trade issues. President Trump has ordered a federal investigation into executive actions taken during Biden's presidency. A memorandum signed by Trump yesterday directs an investigation into whether individuals conspired to mislead the public about Biden's mental fitness and unlawfully assumed presidential powers. The White House says the inquiry will focus on whether there was unlawful misuse of an auto pen. This is a device that replicates a signature. It says Biden's documented cognitive decline and the repeated use of an auto pen raised serious concerns about the legitimacy of his actions. The Department of Justice had ruled back in 2005 that auto pen use is legal if directed by the president. President Biden responded in a statement yesterday saying he made the decisions during his presidency on pardons, executive orders, and legislation. He said any suggestion that he didn't is ridiculous and false. Democrats have dismissed the probe as a distraction. The White House has announced sweeping new travel restrictions targeting nearly 20 countries. The order cites national security and immigration enforcement concerns. Here's what we know.
We will not allow people to enter our country.
President Trump has issued a sweeping proclamation restricting entry to the U.S. from more than a dozen countries.
Today, I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others.
That includes a full visa suspension applied to 12 and partial restrictions to 7 others. The restrictions apply fully to countries including Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, and Yemen, and partially to others like Venezuela, Cuba, and Laos. The White House says the policy targets countries with high visa overstay rates, poor vetting systems, and failure to share ties to terrorism and other threats. A fact sheet accompanying the order cites examples like Chad, where over 49% of tourist visa holders overstayed, and Equatorial Guinea, with an overstay rate above 70%. President Trump says the measure is a matter of national security and necessary to enforce immigration laws.
Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States.
Trump said the strength of the restrictions depends on the severity of the threat posed, and more countries could be added to the list. According to the proclamation, the restrictions take effect next week and will not limit individuals from seeking asylum. It will also not apply to people whose entry serves national interests.
President Trump is doubling down on his debt ceiling demands, making for an unlikely bond with progressive lawmakers on Capitol Hill. NTD's Melina Weisskopf breaks down the debt deal with Trump.
The debt ceiling refers to the amount of money that the government can borrow to pay its bills. Every Congress, there's a big showdown between the majority and the minority party about raising the debt ceiling because the stakes are high for this, and the minority party can essentially use this issue as leverage by withholding their votes to get something they want from the party in charge. Right now, our government is getting close to reaching that debt ceiling, so Congress will need to raise the debt ceiling by mid-July in order to avoid America from defaulting on its debt. The Republicans' big budget bill, as it stands now, the version that came out of the House, would raise the nation's $36 trillion debt by $4 trillion, but President Trump wants lawmakers to completely abolish the debt ceiling, meaning the government could borrow as much money as it wants or needs without first having to get approval from Congress. Here's Trump.
Not being voted on every 5 years or 10 years. And the reason was because it's so catastrophic for our country. And I always agreed with her. That was one thing I agreed with her on. A certain Senator, Elizabeth Warren, had said that she would never, ever allow a default on our debt. She would never let it happen, and she would like to get rid of the debt ceiling, what's called the debt ceiling. I call it the debt extension because we really need an extension, that she'd like to see that gotten rid of. And there are many people that agree. Many Democrats agree with that.
In a separate post, he said, let's get together, Republican and Democrat, and do this. So since Trump has long supported abolishing the debt ceiling, why it matters now and what makes this unlikely bond more notable at this point is because we could be looking at a situation where President Trump is trying to leverage Democrat votes on the debt ceiling increase. So we could be looking at a situation where Senate Republicans separate the debt ceiling increase from this budget reconciliation bill, which would make it easier for Republicans in the Senate to get the reconciliation passed, considering the fact that many fiscal conservatives in the Senate, like Senator Rand Paul, have opposed the reconciliation bill mainly on the basis that it raises the debt ceiling. So we're going to have to watch how all of this shakes out as the Senate continues to negotiate this big budget bill. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Now, the latest in legal battles over the Trump administration's deportations. A federal judge has ordered the administration to provide due process to illegal immigrants deported to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. The immigrants, allegedly linked to the violent Trendiargua gang, were expelled in March under the centuries-old Alien Enemies Act. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg said yesterday they did not get a notice or a chance to challenge their removal. He has now given the administration a week to explain how it will allow the prisoners to file habeas petitions, which will allow them to challenge their detention. The White House says the judge overstepped. The administration also expressed doubts about how it would work with the individuals in question now they're on foreign soil. It's currently unclear how they would file legal challenges from inside one of Latin America's toughest prisons. A man deported to Mexico despite stating fears for his safety has been returned to the United States following a federal judge's order. The Guatemalan man known by the pseudonym OCG was deported to Mexico and later removed to Guatemala. A judge had ruled he should not be sent back to Guatemala. He safely landed back in the U.S. yesterday and is now in ICE custody in Arizona. Attorneys for OCG say he fled Guatemala last year due to threats related to his sexual orientation. This marks the first time the Trump administration has brought back a migrant after a judge ordered the administration to facilitate their return. Coming up, a Texas judge just struck down a law letting illegal immigrants pay in-state tuition, saying it's unfair to U.S. citizens. The ruling could ripple into other states. That and more after the break.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
President Trump signed a proclamation yesterday suspending new international visas for students at Harvard University. This escalates a high-profile legal standoff between the Trump administration and the Ivy League school over federal funding. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more, including new developments at Columbia University.
I don't think Harvard's been acting very nicely.
President Trump's proclamation, titled Enhancing National Security by Addressing Risks at Harvard University, halts entry for new international students under student, work, and exchange visitor visas. It also authorizes the Secretary of State to consider revoking visas of current Harvard students who fall under its criteria. The proclamation accuses Harvard of failing to discipline some categories of conduct violations on campus. It also states that U.S. adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party are trying to take advantage of American higher education by exploiting the student visa program for improper purposes and by using visiting students to collect information at elite universities in the United States.
The United States, I further can say here, will not tolerate the CCP's exploitation of U.S. universities.
The White House says the Chinese Communist Party has sent thousands of mid-career and senior bureaucrats to study at U.S. institutions. Harvard responded to the international visa suspension, calling the proclamation retaliatory. It vowed to continue to protect its international students. The relationship between Harvard and Beijing has elicited concerns about Chinese Communist Party influence. Harvard has long been known among Chinese people for its role in educating the communist regime's elites. In 2014, one state-run media outlet nicknamed the Ivy League University's Kennedy School of Government an unofficial party school. The White House says Harvard has also developed an extensive relationship with foreign adversaries, receiving more than $150 million from China alone. In exchange, it says Harvard has hosted Chinese Communist Party paramilitary members and partnered with China-based individuals on research that could advance China's military modernization. Xi Jinping's own daughter attended Harvard as an undergraduate in the early 2010s. At Harvard University's recent graduation, Zhang Yurong, the first Chinese woman selected to speak at the ceremony, delivered a hopeful message about ending poverty and embracing global unity. But her speech sparked backlash, with critics noting striking similarities to a core Chinese Communist Party slogan, "A community with a shared future for mankind," a phrase closely tied to Communist leader Xi Jinping's diplomatic agenda. Meanwhile, Columbia University is also under federal scrutiny. The Department of Education said on Wednesday that the university violated a federal civil rights law and as a result failed to meet accreditation standards. The move comes amid allegations of widespread discrimination against Jewish students on campus. Education Secretary Linda McMahon wrote on X that Columbia University looked the other way as Jewish students faced harassment, breaking Title VI protections. Title VI prohibits any recipients of federal funding from allowing discrimination based on race, skin color, or national origin. Losing accreditation could mean degrees are no longer recognized and federal aid is jeopardized. Columbia responded to the concerns raised by the Education Department. It said Wednesday that it takes the issue of anti-Semitism on its campus seriously and is continuing to work with the federal government to address it. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
2 Chinese nationals are facing federal charges for smuggling a dangerous crop-killing fungus into the U.S. It's a biological agent that scientists warn could devastate food supplies. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Michigan says the fungus is responsible for billions in agricultural losses each year. It is toxic to both people and livestock. According to court documents, University of Michigan researcher Yun Qingjiang first smuggled the fungus in 2022, stuffing it into her boots to avoid detection. She is also accused of asking a third party to send her the pathogen in January of last year, who then allegedly shipped the samples inside a statistics textbook. The package was intercepted before it arrived. Her boyfriend, Jun Yong Liu, was caught in July with baggies of contaminated plant material hidden in his backpack at the Detroit airport. Authorities say both suspects admitted they planned to use the lab at the University of Michigan to conduct unauthorized research. The University of Michigan released a statement yesterday denying accusations of receiving funding from the Chinese regime and saying they strongly condemn any actions that seek to cause harm or threaten national security. A federal judge has struck down a Texas law that allowed illegal immigrants to pay reduced in-state tuition. The judge ruled the law is unconstitutional. The order came just hours after the Justice Department sued to block the tuition policy. Attorney General Pam Bondi said schools cannot provide benefits to illegal immigrants that they do not provide to U.S. citizens. The program was the first of its kind in the U.S. when it began in Texas in 2001. The law was intended to help dreamers or young adults without legal status. It allowed them to qualify for in-state tuition if they met certain residency criteria. The judge's order overturning the law applies only to Texas, but it could lead to similar challenges in other states. A Republican House Oversight Subcommittee is arguing left-leaning NGOs are misusing billions in taxpayer funds to push radical political agendas. The Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency held a hearing yesterday to share their findings.
Democrat administration officials work with leftist NGOs to implement programs in a manner that ensures those NGOs receive massive grants and contracts. The leaders of those recipient groups then turn around and donate to Democrat political campaigns.
We've documented a large UN NGO support network from field reporting and annual reports from this group called the Regional Refugee and Migrant Response Plan. This network consisted of way stations all along Latin American illegal migration routes that made it possible for millions of foreign nationals from as many as 180 countries to illegally get to the U.S. border, in part funded by U.S. taxpayers.
The subcommittee accused Democrats of using federal grants as slush funds to reward allies and push policies like open borders and the new Green Deal. Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and others on the subcommittee called it a pipeline and called for it to be shut down. Democrats brought in Diane Yentel, who leads the National Council of Nonprofits. In her prepared remarks, she said the Trump administration is targeting nonprofits not for breaking the law, but for, quote, work prioritized by local communities that is at odds with the administration's ideology. Next, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has issued a public health alert for some raw ground beef products sold at Whole Foods markets. The alert is due to a risk of E. coli contamination. The products are 1-pound vacuum-sealed packages of Organic Rancher Organic 85% lean ground beef. The packages are the ones which have to be used or frozen by June 19th or June 20th. A recall was not requested because the products are no longer available for purchase, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Inspection Service urges consumers to check their refrigerators and freezers for the ground beef. The meat should not be used and should be thrown away or returned to the store. There are no confirmed reports of anyone getting sick. The potential contamination was discovered when the producer of the products alerted FSIS that ground beef shipped into commerce had tested positive for E. coli. A recall has been issued for Topo Chico mineral water in 5 states. The recall was issued because of bacterial concerns. Coca-Cola said that the recalled products were shipped to retail locations in Arizona, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, and Texas. The recalled products were purchased between May 20th and May 29th. The mineral water was removed from store shelves due to possible contamination with a bacteria. It's a bacteria naturally found in water sources, but it can be deadly to people with a weakened immune system. No illnesses have been reported. The crew of a cargo ship carrying 3,000 vehicles to Mexico abandoned their vessel off the coast of Alaska. They evacuated after a fire broke out on board. The 22 crew members were safely evacuated from the ship after they failed to put out the fire. The crew was transported to a nearby merchant vessel in tandem with the U.S. Coast Guard. There were no injuries reported. The ship's management company said yesterday that smoke was initially seen coming from the deck loaded with electric vehicles on Tuesday. EV-related fires on ships are challenging to put out. They generate intense heat, and the risk of reignition can last for days. The Coast Guard said it's working with the ship's parent company to coordinate recovery efforts. The Coast Guard is leading an effort to clean up 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel in Baltimore. The spill originated from a Johns Hopkins University hospital. It leaked into the city's inner harbor near its historic water point called Fells Point. The fuel has red dye in it, which makes it easier to see but also obvious to tourists. Officials say the city's drinking water has not been impacted. And coming up, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in Brussels today advocating to raise defense spending from 2 to 5%. What NATO members say about the idea of bringing spending to 5% of their GDP, that and more when we come back from the break.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they can do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way. No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-210-6422, 800-210-6422.
9-0, the Supreme Court rules Wisconsin violated the First Amendment by denying a Catholic charity group an exemption to the state's unemployment tax. And the court made it easier to claim reverse discrimination in the workplace. Plus, in another unanimous decision, the court blocks Mexico's claims that U.S. gun makers fueled cartel violence. NTD's Arlene Richards has the Supreme Court roundup.
3 unanimous decisions in one day. The Supreme Court released decisions on Thursday that impact religious exemptions, employment discrimination, and gun maker responsibilities. First, the court sided with a Wisconsin-based Catholic charity group in a case centered on unemployment tax credits for religious institutions. The decision delivered a victory for faith-based institutions who had argued the state's decision not to grant the exemption violated the First Amendment. 9 justices unanimously agreed the state had unnecessarily attempted to define whether religious groups should be entitled to an otherwise available tax exemption. They said the state analyzed the group's entitlement based on the state's criteria for religious behavior. The Wisconsin Supreme Court had previously ruled the group was not operated primarily for religious purposes, since it serves and employs non-Catholics and doesn't require participants to practice the Catholic faith. In Ohio, the court unanimously allowed a straight woman to revive her reverse discrimination case. The justices found that the Civil Rights Act does not limit members of the majority group from filing discrimination claims. Marlene Ames, who worked for the Ohio Department of Youth Services for 2 decades, sued under the landmark law. She claimed the department passed her over for a promotion and then demoted her in favor of gay colleagues. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, writing the opinion for the court, said Congress intended for the law to apply to every individual with no special requirements for members of the majority group. And finally, in this Supreme Court roundup, the High Court justices agreed U.S. gun manufacturers can't be blamed for gun violence in Mexico. The country claimed their case should proceed because it satisfied an exception to the liability shield provided to gun makers under federal law. Mexico said U.S. gun makers knowingly aided and abetted the unlawful sale of their firearms to straw purchasers who trafficked them across the border to drug cartels. The justices ruled that because their claims didn't accuse gun makers of directly aiding and abetting retail dealers, it was barred under the law. The Mexican government had sued 7 of the biggest gun makers in the U.S. They were seeking $10 billion in damages. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
To discuss this case and the ruling further, we're bringing in Mark Miller, senior attorney with Pacific Legal Foundation. Mark, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us. So as we just heard, the woman who brought the case is from a majority group. That means she's a straight woman and she's alleging discrimination. So based on that, firstly, your thoughts on her win here by a unanimous Supreme Court ruling?
Well, yes, as you said, and as your lead-in described, we had 3 unanimous decisions today at the Supreme Court. The justices were all singing kumbaya, if you will. And in this case about employment discrimination in the workplace, it was really about fairness and the rule of law. Just because you're a member of a majority group, that doesn't mean you can be discriminated against. The law should treat all of us equally. And it was very nice to see that all 9 justices could agree on what should be a fairly simple and fair point that everyone should understand.
So this unanimous decision, were you surprised by that? Were you expecting that?
Coming out of the oral argument, both in this employment case and the Smith and Wesson case, and then even the Catholic Charities case, it was clear that the justices were finding common ground on a lot of the underlying issues here in this employment discrimination case. The idea that somebody could be passed over for 2 different positions and allege that it was because she was heterosexual and that the people that got the jobs over her had not as good an employment record as she did, or as lengthy as an employment record, yet she was being passed over because they were homosexual. That's not to say it's true, but what the Supreme Court said is if you allege that, then you have made a valid employment discrimination claim that, if you've got enough evidence, should go to a jury and let the jury decide. They said there's no special rules just because you're a heterosexual or a member of a majority group. There's no special circumstances that say you can be discriminated against in favor of a disfavored minority. The law applies the same for everyone and equally.
So let me reiterate that point. I mean, she's saying that people who she alleged were not sufficiently qualified for the roles. That's what she was arguing, and the suggestion being that these people were given preference because they identified as gay. How often is this happening in employment today? Is there any indication of how prevalent this is?
It's really hard to quantify how often it's happening because most people, they're not interested in getting involved in litigation, and they're afraid if they get into litigation, they'll lose. And even here, you could see why she might think she would lose, because until the Supreme Court decided this today, there was controversy in the courts as to whether a heterosexual could bring a claim for, what we call sort of colloquially reverse discrimination. So even though we can't quantify it, obviously this case just shows that it seems to be happening. And it was nice for the Supreme Court to unanimously say, no, not on our watch. That's not what the 14th Amendment, that's not what employment discrimination laws like Title VII allow.
Do you think this is significant, this ruling for non-minority groups to demonstrate employment discrimination in lawsuits?
Well, it's significant for a number of reasons. First, it's significant because it sends a message that whether you're being discriminated against because of your race, your sexual preference, your nationality, your national origin, or here because you're heterosexual, you can bring a discrimination claim. Congress does not want to see anyone discriminated against. You should be judged on the merit of your skills and talents for a job, not because someone has a bias against you, an illegal bias against you. And then number two, it's interesting as well, Justice Thomas wrote a concurrence where he's sort of questioning the entire employment discrimination laws. Not that he doesn't think employment discrimination is wrong, but he is sort of calling to reconsider how we address employment discrimination through the courts. So bottom line is this is a very important decision for the path of the law.
Do you think this could be applied to other instances of majority group experiencing discrimination in employment that's aside from sexuality, such as race, for example, or nationality, and etc.?
Yeah, discrimination is wrong no matter who it is targeting. And so this decision sends that message that there are no special rules if you're a majority member versus a minority, a quote unquote minority member. We shouldn't treat people based on their what class they're in or what type of person they are. We should treat them based on their individual characteristics. And that's what the Supreme Court is saying. Don't treat people as groups. Treat them as individuals. And that is a resounding win for individual liberty. That's why Pacific Legal Foundation filed a brief in support of what became the outcome in the case. This is exactly the outcome we wanted to see. People should be treated based on the merits of who they are, not the color of their skin or their heterosexual or homosexual tendencies. No, they should be treated based on who they are individually and what good a job they do.
Well, all right, Mark, once again, thank you very much for your time today.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
And moving now to the war in Gaza, Israel says the bodies of 2 hostages have been recovered in a joint military and intelligence operation. 70-year-old Judy Weinstein Haggai and 72-year-old Gadi Haggai were killed near their home on October 7th during Hamas's attack on Israel in 2023. The couple were dual U.S.-Israeli citizens and were among the victims taken from kibbutz near Oz, near the Gaza border. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked those involved in the operation and reaffirmed his commitment to bringing all hostages home. Meanwhile, the U.S. vetoed a UN Security Council demand yesterday for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Here's the U.S. representative to the United Nations, Dorothy Shee.
We would not support any measure that fails to condemn Hamas and does not call for Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza. This resolution would undermine diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire that reflects the realities on the ground and emboldens Hamas. No one wants to see Palestinian civilians in Gaza go hungry or thirsty. We instead urge the UN and NGOs to support the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to help it safely deliver aid without being diverted by Hamas.
The remaining 14 council members voted in favor of the draft resolution, which also called for unhindered aid access across the Gaza Strip. Israel has rejected calls for an unconditional or permanent ceasefire, saying Hamas cannot stay in Gaza. The Secretary of State said the resolution would only serve to advance the interests of Hamas terrorists while undermining diplomatic efforts. Bringing the NATO defense spending from 2% up to 5%. President Trump advocates for the sharp increase, which would more than double each country's spending. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth now says many NATO members agreed to the new goal. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the story.
America can't be everywhere all the time, nor should we be.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says he supports NATO members spending more on defense. Hegseth is in Brussels on Thursday for a meeting of NATO defense ministers. President Trump seeks to raise the defense spending of each country from 2% of their respective GDP to 5%, more than doubling it. Hegseth says a number of countries seem to agree.
From France to Germany, to the Baltics, to the Nordic countries, to Poland, to Greece, to Hungary, to so many more, the commitment is there.
NATO Chief Mark Rutte has proposed alliance members boost defense spending to 3.5% of their GDP and then commit a further 1.5% to broader security-related spending. On Thursday, various countries welcomed the idea of raising the spending to 5%, such as Sweden.
I do want to convey that this is an historic moment for Europe. If we are able to reach 5% by 2030 or 2032, we're going to go up to a defense investment that was at the height of the Cold War, and it's necessary for us to strengthen our ability to defend and continue living in peace.
Hegseth praises President Trump's initiative for strengthening NATO.
It was an alliance that was sleepwalking to irrelevance. And President Trump, in his first term, said you need to step up and spend more. And he has in this term done the same.
He added that the alliance is increasingly facing threats, saying it needs more capabilities and more, quote, hard power. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
The CEO of Mercedes-Benz said that the company proposed a deal to allow U.S. cars into Europe without import duties. In return, the U.S. would drop tariffs on the same number of cars exported by European automakers. The CEO said that this idea has been shared with both sides and could be part of the ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and the EU. He said that such a deal could act as a precedent for other industries. Europe's main auto supplier association said production lines are feeling the impact of China's rare earth minerals curbs. The European Association of Automotive Suppliers represents more than 3,000 companies in the automotive supply industry. It said yesterday that China's export curbs have led to the slowdown, or the shutdown rather, of several plants across the continent. Further disruptions are expected as inventories run out in the coming weeks. China said last month that it was tightening control over the entire supply chain of strategic rare earth minerals. Under the Chinese Communist Party, China holds a near monopoly on the global rare earths market. It dominates both mining and processing through state-controlled companies and strict export regulations. A pan-European consumers organization filed a complaint against online fast fashion retailer Shein. That's over its use of so-called dark patterns. Here's more about these tactics.
Fast fashion retailer Shein has been accused of manipulating shoppers. European consumer group Burke said it uses so-called dark patterns to push people to buy more. It's filed a complaint to the European Commission. That cites practices including pop-up ads that tell people they will lose promotions if they leave the app. The group says Shein also uses countdown timers to create pressure to make a purchase. And it says the firm sends excessive notifications, with one phone getting 12 in a day. In a statement, Shein said it was working with the Commission and consumer bodies to make sure it complied with EU laws. It said Burke had not accepted its request for a meeting. The consumer group has also targeted Shein rival Temu in a previous complaint. Both firms have grown rapidly in Europe, helped by apps that turn shopping into a game. In Shein's Puppy Keep game, for example, users have to feed a virtual dog and collect rewards to get free items. They can get more points by using the app and making orders, but have to log in every day or risk losing cumulative awards. In a separate move last month, the Commission notified Shein of practices that breach EU law and said it would face fines if it didn't address the concerns.
In Paris, many residents remain shaken by the violence that erupted last weekend after a soccer game. Some are now calling for a stronger response from the justice system. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
Around 600 people were arrested in Paris last weekend during violent riots. The violence following Paris Saint-Germain's victory in the European Championship came at a high cost. 2 people died and around 200 were injured, including 22 police officers and 7 firefighters. While life gradually returned to normal on the Champs-Élysées at the start of the week, some neighborhoods in Paris still bear the scars of the unrest. Near the Parc des Princes stadium, where the team celebrated its win on Sunday, residents expressed their shock at the events.
The rioters were launching fireworks all over the place. They could have injured people or set buildings on fire if they had flown into apartments. It really wasn't safe, and it was frightening. Later, the police charged at the rioters, and only then did the danger start to ease.
We live really close to the stadium, and compared to usual, the violences started relatively early. There were a lot of people, a lot of firecrackers and smoke bombs. So even inside the building, we were not reassured.
I went downstairs, there was someone calling for help. It was a woman who'd taken refuge into our building. She said, "I want to take refuge somewhere. I want to take refuge somewhere. They're grabbing my face, they're touching my breasts. I can't take it anymore." The police was outside the building, so she was safe, but it was scary. The people who did all that, I don't think they were supporters or sports fan at all.
This is not normal. In England or other countries, people can celebrate. They get together with their families without fear of incidents. So one day we'll have to get to that point too, to be able to celebrate without incidents.
President Emmanuel Macron promised that justice would be harsh against those responsible for the violence. However, an investigation by Le Figaro revealed that about 1/3 of those arrested were released without charges. Many others avoided prosecution and were instead assigned to take part in citizenship education programs. A former Minister of Justice stated that the current judicial tools are not adequate for handling such mass violence. Meanwhile, a police union spokesperson warned that the lack of a strong legal response makes it likely that similar events could happen again in the future. David Vivez, NTD News, Paris.
Coming up, classical music met creativity in the streets of Esher in the United Kingdom. Mozart's melodies took on a new life, played on something you wouldn't find in an orchestra pit. That and more when we come back.
Being a cowboy, well, I don't know anything different. I had a very successful career. Life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally. And then I got hurt. I dug into mental health. I wanted to be better as a person. I start my day with a workout. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without them.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits 0, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down. Call before that happens. Call 800-983-3523. 800-983-3523.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Classical music met creativity in the streets of Esher in the United Kingdom. Mozart's melodies took on a new life, played on something you wouldn't find in a pit orchestra. Here's more.
Outside Garson's farm shop in the southern English town of Esher, an ensemble of musicians turned carrots, zucchini, and bell peppers into working instruments to perform famous tunes to passers-by. Members of the London Vegetable Orchestra carefully carve holes into large, locally sourced carrots to produce edible recorders, a process which takes about 20 minutes to complete.
Well, if you think of a tree, which is cylindrical, it grows in the ground, it's got roots, it's got leaves, and a carrot is the same. It's cylindrical, grows in the ground, it's got roots, it's got leaves, so there's no reason why a carrot should not make a recorder every bit as good as a tree. And in fact, they do. In some aspects, they're better.
Tim Cranmore started the unusual orchestra after discovering the story of a Japanese man who crafted the instruments out of carrots. The 4 members of the music troupe demonstrated their vegetable carving skills to intrigue onlookers before showcasing their renditions of classical music, pop hits, and even Disney sing-alongs.
It started many, many years ago when a friend of mine rang me up and said, "Have you seen a man in Japan who makes recorders out of carrots?" He knew I was a recorder maker. And I said, "No, I haven't seen him." I looked at him, and we made a few carrots that played three notes, and we did a little film that was video that went out on YouTube, as things were, and then we got an offer from Tyrrell's Crisps to start a vegetable orchestra.
The London Vegetable Orchestra has performed on British television shows. They have even had an audience with King Charles, who gave the carrot recorder a try himself.
Coming up, California's bullet train project faces a major funding threat as the federal government moves to pull billions of dollars. The state has limited time to address cost and delay concerns before the Trump administration cuts funding. We have that and more after the break.
Hey, have you heard what's happening at Mathis Home? Get new lower prices all summer long with price drop alerts all over the store. They have all the latest looks at unbeatable prices. Like this big sofa with curved arms and 5 plush throw pillows. They dropped the price to just $5.99. That's an incredible value. And with their huge selection, you're sure to find the style that's just right for you. In stock with fast, free delivery. Look for price drop alert tags and save now at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
A painting that has true beauty. I imagine it's like a door. The artist holds the key to open the door and bring people to a purer world.